Today I will be talking about the power of waiting, and I'm watching you, and I know if you've watched this video. I'm on to you. Throughout the video, I'll be asking you 3 questions. These questions will be on the same background you see here. You'll write the answers to these questions down and hand them in prior to the PD day on March 20th. What's the purpose of today? What's the purpose of this video, rather? It's threefold. The first thing is, the first question that comes to mind, or thing that I want to talk about is, are we matching up our course outlines with how we are assessing our students? I think that we have this Maplewood, this great tool, but now I don't know, or we don't know, if what we're actually plugging into this thing, what we're plugging in is what we're actually getting, and what if it's matching up with what we've told the students of how we're assessing them. This whole weighting issue too, the whole math behind how it works, I don't think that you truly have to completely understand it in order for you to use it to the best of your ability. I think everyone in this room, or everyone that's watching this video, understands the power of 100, and if you understand the basics of 100%, you should be able to use Maplewood quite easily, and to the power that it's supposed to be used. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the pitfalls of waiting. We understand, we know, and I've talked to a few of you about how you definitely know that you want certain assignments to be more, you want that to be a bigger chunk of their mark. The problem with when you start playing around with your weighting in Maplewood is that you sometimes can lose sight of how much that is actually worth in the grand scheme of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my examples coming up. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how your course outline should be matching up with your mark book. Now, for some of us, this is a course. This is my calculus course. I only have 2 headings here. If you look at here and here, on the course outline, it says that quizzes are worth 30%. That's how I've weighted my quizzes, and tests are worth 70%. Now, this course, I don't assess by outcome. I assess them specifically by how they're going to be assessed in calculus at the university level. So basically, there's 2 things that I look at. I look at quizzes and I look at tests. So I want to look specifically at Tristan Murky. Tristan Murky is at the bottom here. Whoa, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, so I'll just point to where Tristan is. Tristan's mark is right here. She's got a grand total of 84.91 right now. I want to specifically look at what her marks are showing here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different quizzes I've given them. I've made up for them for the purpose of this tutorial. So what this says is that Tristan has an 84%, but she has a 74.491 on quizzes. Now, basically what this tells me is that she's doing a heck of a lot better on her tests than she is on her quizzes. That's not what I want to talk about today. I wanted to look at the break of her quizzes. Before I get to that, now first of all, before I move on, I want to talk about the power of markbook items. Some of you might be just using the categories. These are called categories here. I have 2 categories, quizzes and tests. I have several markbook items. And the reason why it's good to have items is that this is where your power of how you can really kind of control what you have in terms of how you're allocating your marks. I know that I want my quizzes to be 30%. I can tell Markbook that I want it to be 30%, and then I can play with whatever I want to do with my quizzes, because some of my quizzes might be more important than other ones. So for example, if I look at these 7 quizzes here across the board, I want to, for a minute, look at the limits one. The limits quiz is the only quiz that Tristan got 0%, 0 out of 14 possible marks. And limits, I'm just fictitiously picking this out, that limits was something that we spent way more time than any of the other headings. So I'm going to actually make limits much more heavier in a minute here, and I'm going to see what happens to our quiz mark. So our quiz mark currently right now is 74.491. I'm going to change it and see what it looks like. Okay, so before I had all my quizzes here set to being weighted the same. They were all 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. This time I changed this to a 60. And if you recall, the same quiz was where Tristan had a 0. So look at what it basically plummeted her mark. So what happened is that just by me changing this to 60, I didn't randomly select 60. I chose 60 on purpose because that means that this limits quiz right here is actually equivalent to being 50% of all of these put together. If all of these add up to 60%, the other 6 assessment tools I've had equal 60%. These all add up to 60. That means that this mark on limits is now 50% of their quiz grade. I know it's a lot of math, but look at what it did to her grade. She was like at an 84 point something, 19, whatever, and now it's 70. It's 10, almost 10% difference. So it's very important that when you're weighting stuff in here, if you start playing with these numbers, in order for your students to appear or look like where they're supposed to be, you know that you want certain assignments, whether it's an essay or a project or a test, you want them to be higher. You have to really pay attention as to what you're doing in terms of how you're weighting it to everything else that's in that same category. Again, what the optimal thing that we should kind of reach for is that these right here, these categories that I can't get there, the categories of quiz, this mark should be very, very close to what you've told them that it is. You can play with these numbers in here as much as you like, but as long as this is 30, no matter what you do in here, this will hold true to what your course outline will be or say. Okay, so here's your first question that you're going to be handing in before the PD day on March 20th. What was Tristan's mark before I weighted the limits quiz at 60%? I don't know what it was. You should know. The question now becomes is your course outline actually matching with your current assessment practices in your class? Aside from being outcome-based assessing, we need to make sure that if we are telling them in our course outlines that tests are worth 50%, then we need to make sure and ensure in Markbook that it's actually happening. So how do I know whether I'm hitting exactly what my course outline says in my Markbook? The easiest way to figure out whether you are properly weighting your stuff accordingly to what your course outline says is to look at what you actually have for your weights. It doesn't matter in Maplewood what you have for, can I get this to work? I can. It doesn't matter what your denominators are right here. The first marks are what actually were your denominators on your lessons. You don't care about those right now. You have to look at each lesson and think, self, what did I allocate that on my course outline? So when you go to weight these things, this one's worth 10, this one's worth 60, this one's worth 20, 30, 10, 10, and 10. Basically what's happening is I have a weighting system out of 130. So basically on my course outline, I don't have a weighting. I never weight anything out of 130. I've never seen anyone do it out of 130. So what I'm saying is that when you're weighting these things, make sure, and essentially what's happened here with my quizzes, I've averaged them, not averaged them, but they're weighted out of 130. They're not even out of 100. You don't have to be out of 100. This number could be 430. It really doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is that if you, next time you do this, going to categories helps you because, again, it really nails down what you want to allot for this specific concept. No, I don't carry a flame for you having quizzes here. I don't on my other courses. Again, this is my traditional course where calculus at the university level, that's how they assess them. So in my normal courses though, this is my unit. So say this in my pre-calculus class might be like this quiz mark here. That might be my, my unit on algebra. So this would be my algebra unit. And I would weight my algebra unit by how many hours I've allocated, or not allocated, how much I've told the students in my course outline. If algebra should have been worth 20% in my course outline, then this right here would be 20%. So, but if you're not there this year and if you want to get there next year, this is a really great place to start, because how you weight this basically is, again, the way I see it is that it comes back to time on how much you spend on each of these. Your second question of the lesson is, why does a markbook item give you more control in terms of weighting than a category? Again, this is what I kind of just answered in the last slide. So if you want to give it your best shot, again, this will be attached to your first and third question that you handed on the 20th. For crying out loud, people, don't panic. If you need help with this, I can help you with this or on the 20th to kind of look at what you have and where you need to. If you don't understand the math of what's just happened, I'll help you out on the 20th for sure. The last question for today is kind of like a mathy thing. Suppose student X got the following 3 marks below and you weighted them as noted. Determine whether this student is passing your course or failing at this given time. For bonus marks, tell me what student X mark actually is. Now, this is typically how I end my lessons, with kind of a question that's going to push their knowledge of what they just learned. I know that I didn't show you a lot of math of how this works. Give it your best shot, hand it in with your 2 other questions, and we'll take it from there. This concludes our lesson for today on the power of weighting in Maplewood. Woo! See you tomorrow.